we're kicking off a brand new series, The History of America. Welcome to our journey through time. But to truly understand America, we need to rewind the clock, long before the familiar stories of pilgrims and powdered wigs. We're going back to a time when this land was not a new world, but a very old one, teeming with millions of people and hundreds of distinct cultures. This is a story of a world before 1492. Imagine, if you will, a continent vibrant with life. In the heart of modern-day Mexico, the mighty Aztec Empire reigned from their magnificent capital, Tenochtitlan, a city of canals and pyramids that rivaled any in Europe. Further south, nestled in the dense jungles of Central America, the legacy of the Maya civilization lived on. They were masters of mathematics, astronomy, and had developed one of the most sophisticated writing systems in the ancient world. And high in the Andes Mountains, the vast Inca Empire stretched for thousands of miles, connected by an incredible network of roads and ruled with remarkable efficiency. But it wasn't just these great empires. North America was a mosaic of diverse nations, from the skilled farmers of the Mississippian culture who built monumental earthwork mounds like Cahokia City, larger than London at the time, to the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois Confederacy in the Northeast, who formed a groundbreaking political alliance based on peace and consensus. In the arid Southwest, the ancestral Pueblones constructed breathtaking cliff dwellings, and on the Great Plains, nomadic tribes followed the immense herds of bison that sustained their way of life. Each of these groups had its own language, its own spiritual beliefs, its own art, and its own deep connection to the land they called home. They were traders, innovators, artists, and philosophers. This was a world rich in history and tradition, completely unknown to the other half of the globe. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Europe was in a state of flux. The Renaissance was sparking a revolution in art, science, and thought. Trade routes to the east, the source of precious spices and silks, were the lifeblood of European economies, but these routes were long, dangerous, and controlled by rival powers. They were hungry for wealth, for glory, and for the chance to spread their faith. It was this ambition that fueled a new age of exploration. Enter a determined Genoese navigator with a radical idea, Christopher Columbus. He believed he could reach the east by sailing west. After years of seeking support, he finally convinced the Spanish monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, to fund his audacious voyage. In August of 1492, three small ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, set sail from Spain into the vast, uncharted Atlantic. The crew was anxious, sailing farther from land than any European had before. After more than 2 months at sea, on the morning of October 12th, a lookout spotted land. Columbus and his men had reached what they believed to be the outskirts of Asia, the Indies. They had, in fact, arrived in the Bahamas. They had stumbled upon a world they never knew existed. The two great halves of humanity, separated for millennia, were about to meet. The first encounters were a mix of awe, confusion, and apprehension. The Taino people, who greeted Columbus on that small island, were generous and curious. Columbus, in his journals, noted their kindness, but also saw them through the lens of a conqueror, immediately assessing their potential for conversion and servitude. For the native peoples, these strange visitors with their pale skin, facial hair, and peculiar clothing were a complete enigma. Their massive ships seemed like floating islands, and their metal weapons were unlike anything they had ever seen. There was an initial period of cautious trade and interaction. Europeans were fascinated by the gold ornaments, the strange foods like maize and potatoes, and the vibrant parrots. Native peoples were intrigued by glass beads and metal tools, but this curiosity was quickly overshadowed by a fundamental misunderstanding. The Europeans saw land and resources as commodities to be owned and exploited. For Native Americans, the land was a sacred communal entity that could not be sold. This clash of worldviews would sow the seeds of devastating conflict. Columbus's return to Spain with gold, parrots, and even captive indigenous people set off a frenzy. He was hailed as a hero who had found a new route to untold riches. This discovery ignited a race for colonization. Spain, armed with superior steel weapons, horses, and a ruthless determination for God, gold, and glory, led the charge. Conquistadors like Hernan Cortes and Francisco Pizarro launched brutal campaigns against the Aztec and Inca empires. They exploited internal divisions, captured leaders, and laid siege to their magnificent cities. But the Europeans brought with them an even deadlier weapon: disease. Smallpox, measles, and influenza, common in Europe for centuries, were completely alien to the Americas. Native peoples had no natural immunity. Epidemics swept through the continent like wildfire, wiping out entire communities. Some historians estimate that up to 90% of the indigenous population perished in the century following contact. It was a demographic catastrophe of unimaginable scale, one of the greatest tragedies in human history. The vibrant worlds of the Aztec and Inca crumbled not just under the sword, but under the invisible onslaught of germs. This great dying emptied the land, making it far easier for European powers to seize control. In the wake of conquest, new settlements began to sprout. The Spanish established a vast colonial empire stretching from modern-day Florida and California down to the tip of South America. They built new cities on the ruins of old ones, imposed their language and religion, and created a rigid social hierarchy with Europeans at the top. They established the encomienda system, a brutal form of forced labor that exploited indigenous populations on plantations and in silver mines, funneling immense wealth back to Spain. Other European powers, not wanting to be left behind, soon joined the fray. The Portuguese colonized Brazil, the French established outposts in Canada and along the Mississippi River, and the English began to eye the Atlantic coast of North America. The world was being fundamentally and permanently rewired. The events that began in 1492 set in motion a new global age. The Columbian Exchange, the vast transfer of plants, animals, culture, technology, and ideas between the Americas and the Old World, transformed life on every continent. Foods from the Americas, like potatoes, tomatoes, and corn, became staples that fueled population growth in Europe and Asia. Horses, introduced by the Spanish, revolutionized life for many native tribes on the Great Plains. But this exchange also brought conquest, slavery, and the decimation of ancient cultures. The discovery of the Americas was, for its original inhabitants, an invasion that brought about the end of their world. The dawn of this new world was, in reality, the twilight of the old one. The legacy of this moment is complex and is still felt today, shaping the very fabric of the modern Americas. Thank you so much for joining us on this first step of our journey. The story is just beginning, and what comes next is a tale of empire, rebellion, and the struggle to define a new nation. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next episode. We'll see you next time.